Don't fly that jet. The little girl said, staring dead ahead, voice flat, eyes wide. Something bad's gonna happen. Everyone laughed. And 2 hours later, half the seats on Flight 237 were empty permanently. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a silly kid being dramatic. It was the kind of warning that feels like a gust of icy wind in a warm room, sharp, sudden, wrong in a way you can't explain. The morning had started like any other. Denver International buzzed with the low, constant hum of suitcase wheels dragging across linoleum. People shuffled in their sleep-deprived days, clutching cardboard coffee cups like lifelines. Fluorescent lights painted everything in that flat, pale yellow. Samantha Beckett stood in line with her family, her husband, 2 kids, and her younger sister, at gate B19, yawning behind her hoodie. It was 6:42 a.m. Their flight to San Diego was boarding in 40 minutes. A family vacation that had taken months to plan, squeezed between her husband's project deadlines and the start of the school year. Their youngest, Emma, was 6. One of those kids who asks 100 questions before breakfast and notices the tiniest things most adults miss. That morning, though, Emma wasn't chatty. She wasn't restless or excited like she usually was at airports. She was quiet. Frozen, almost. "Mommy?" she had asked, tugging gently on Samantha's jacket. "Can we take a different plane?" Samantha smiled, still scrolling through a text from her boss. "Why, honey? This one's going to San Diego. That's where the beach is, remember?" Emma looked at the large window facing the tarmac. Her hands stayed wrapped tight around the little stuffed fox she took everywhere. "That plane feels weird." Samantha followed her gaze. There it was, Flight 237, a commercial jet just like any other, parked neatly under the early sun. Crew members moved like ants around it. Fueling, checking, loading. Nothing unusual. "What do you mean a weird, sweetie?" But Emma didn't answer. She kept staring at the jet. Her face pale, mouth slightly open, like she was watching something far away that no one else could see. "Something's wrong with it," she whispered. Samantha blinked. "Emma, sweetheart, planes can't feel weird. It's just sitting there. It's fine." And then came the moment, the one that would echo in Samantha's head long after the headlines faded. Emma slowly turned toward the crowd and, in a clear voice that cut through the boarding calls and chatter like a knife through fabric, she said, "Don't fly that jet." Silence. Not total, but enough. Heads turned. A few passengers chuckled. Some smiled sympathetically. Others rolled their eyes and went back to their phones. Just a little girl playing make-believe. Just an overly imaginative kid saying something strange. But for Samantha, something twisted inside her gut. Her husband, Mark, laughed awkwardly and leaned in. "Okay, babe, she's just tired. Let's get her some juice. She'll be fine." Except she didn't seem tired. She seemed terrified. By the time boarding began, Emma had sat down on the cold tile floor and refused to move. "I don't want to go," she kept saying. "I don't want to go on that plane." The gate agent tried to smile through it, though her expression flickered when she looked at the girl's pale face. "Nervous flyer, huh?" Mark nudged Samantha. "Come on. We've got to go. This is going to throw off the whole trip." Samantha crouched in front of her daughter. "Emma," she said gently, brushing hair from her face. "Can you tell me what you're feeling?" Emma didn't blink. "It's going to fall." Samantha froze. "The plane?" A small nod. "It's not supposed to go." A pause. A long, tight pause. That moment, the one where everything hangs on a wire so thin it's nearly invisible. That was the moment Samantha felt it too. Not the same certainty as Emma. But something. A prickle at the base of her neck. A noise just beneath hearing. The feeling you get when the air in the room shifts and for a heartbeat you feel like something is watching you. "Maybe we should switch flights," she heard herself say. Mark blinked. "What?" "I don't know. She's never done this before." "I just look at her." "You're going to cancel the whole trip because she's having a weird morning?" "She's not just having a weird morning. Look at her, Mark." He looked. Really looked. Emma sat like stone, face white, hands trembling slightly as she clutched the fox so hard it seemed stretched. "She's scaring the other passengers," said the gate agent softly. And she was right. People were staring now. Whispering. Giving them sidelong glances like they were crazy or dramatic or both. But Samantha didn't care anymore. Something deep in her bones whispered, "Listen to her." Mark exhaled hard through his nose. "Okay. Fine. We'll switch flights. Happy?" They walked to the desk. The gate agent, half smiling but visibly relieved, helped them rebook for the afternoon flight, Flight 482, same destination, just 7 hours later. Emma didn't speak again until they sat at a nearby cafe with overpriced muffins and weak coffee. She just sipped orange juice slowly, hands still wrapped around the fox. And then the world flipped. It happened at 8:12 a.m. 20 minutes after Flight 237 left the runway. Phones buzzed first. News alerts. Texts. A flurry of digital whispers turned into a scream. The cafe TV switched to breaking news. People stopped mid-bite, mid-sentence. Flight 237 had made an emergency descent less than 10 minutes after takeoff. Oxygen masks dropped. Lights flickered. Cabin pressure failed. Passengers reported the cabin went dead silent for a split second, like the world took a breath and held it. Then came screaming. Alarms. Chaos. They managed to land. But barely. Emergency crews swarmed the tarmac. Windows shattered from inside. The nose of the plane looked crumpled, like a fist had come down hard on it. Several passengers were hospitalized. Several others didn't walk off the flight. Samantha stood frozen in the middle of the cafe, the world buzzing in her ears. Emma sat quietly, watching the screen, not blinking. I told you, she said softly. Mark dropped his cup. It shattered on the floor. The airport was suddenly colder, even though the air conditioning hadn't changed. Around them, the hum of travel had turned jagged, broken by gasps and frantic phone calls. People were watching the TV with wide, unblinking eyes. Some looked like they were about to cry. Others like they were about to throw up. Samantha couldn't take her eyes off the screen. Footage showed their plane sitting crooked on the tarmac, emergency slides deployed, black scorch marks around the engines. Smoke drifted from the fuselage like the ghost of something still angry. A line of ambulances waited near the runway. The news anchor's voice was measured, professional, but behind the words there was that underlying tension, like no one really knew what had just happened. Mark sat down slowly, hard, like the weight of what they'd avoided had just hit his chest. Jesus, he whispered. That could have been us. Samantha didn't say anything. She was still staring at Emma, who now looked peaceful. Like something heavy had lifted off her small shoulders. They didn't leave the airport. Not yet. Security locked down part of the terminal and the atmosphere was taut with invisible wires. Conversations dropped to whispers. Travelers walked slower. Every overhead announcement sounded sharper, like it might carry bad news. They sat in that cafe for over an hour, surrounded by untouched pastries and cold coffee. I want to go home, Emma finally said. Samantha didn't argue. They approached the customer service desk, where a harried-looking man with tired eyes and a crooked tie was trying to calm 3 passengers who had just learned their connecting flights were canceled. Samantha waited quietly until it was their turn, then asked to cancel the rebooked flight. We need to go home. Today. The man didn't even ask why. A few hours later, they were driving back toward Boulder in a rented minivan. Mark was silent behind the wheel. The kids dozed in the back, Emma curled against her sister, her hands still gripping the fox. Outside, gray clouds were gathering over the mountains, thick and bruised-looking. No one spoke much during the drive. The radio stayed off. Even the traffic seemed quieter than usual, as though the world itself was trying to make space for what had just happened. It wasn't until they got home, back to the soft familiarity of their kitchen, the hum of the fridge, the quiet creak of the floorboards, that Samantha allowed herself to really breathe. And then, finally, the questions started pressing in. She sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at the hallway light filtering through the crack in the door. Her heart felt like it was moving in slow motion, heavy and uneven. What did Emma know? How did she know? She thought back. Emma hadn't had a dream. She hadn't cried or thrown a tantrum like a kid scared of flying. She'd known, calmly, clearly, and with certainty, that something was wrong. And she had never done anything like that before. Samantha couldn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m. she went to Emma's room. The girl was curled up, sleeping soundly, her breath even and slow. The fox lay under her chin. Her small chest rose and fell like waves on a quiet shore. Samantha sat at the edge of the bed, brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, and whispered, "Why did you say not to fly, baby?" Emma stirred. Eyes fluttered open, but she didn't seem surprised to see her mother there. There was something dark, she said softly. Inside the plane. Not like a person. Just wrong. Samantha's skin prickled. Did someone tell you that? Did you hear something? A story. Emma shook her head, slow. I just saw it. Like a shadow. It didn't want to be seen. But I saw it anyway. Samantha blinked. Her mouth was dry. She wanted to ask more, wanted to press, but she didn't. Something told her not to. She just kissed her daughter's forehead and went back to her room, feeling colder than she had in years. The next day brought more news. Investigations into Flight 237 were already underway. Preliminary reports hinted at a mechanical failure. Faulty wiring, maybe? But experts said it didn't add up. Planes don't just stop like that. Oxygen doesn't just vanish without triggering protocols. Something had failed catastrophically, but no one knew exactly what. And then the story started. A passenger posted on social media that the moment before the drop, the plane had felt off. Like it had jerked slightly, then paused in the sky. Like the air had turned to syrup. Another woman, interviewed by a local station, said she'd heard a low hum, almost like a voice, but not a voice. Something under everything else. She said she didn't believe in anything weird, but for a moment she was sure they weren't alone in the air. The airline avoided comments. More survivors came forward and their stories started echoing. The hum. The silence. The moment when it felt like gravity itself shifted. The overwhelming, stomach-turning sense of being watched. Samantha watched each interview. All of them. She didn't tell Mark. Not yet. He was trying hard to push forward to pretend everything was normal again. The kids were back in school by Wednesday. Life resumed in that dull, necessary way it does. But Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something had cracked open and now there was something leaking through. On Thursday, a letter arrived. It was plain. No return address. Just a crisp, white envelope with her name in careful handwriting. Inside, one line on a sheet of paper. You made the right choice. But this isn't over. Samantha stared at the words for a long time. Then she looked out the window. And across the street, parked just out of view of the house, was a black sedan. Windows tinted too dark. Engine running. She blinked hard, once, twice, trying to convince herself it wasn't there. But it was. The engine's soft purr rolled across the street like the low murmur of something breathing too close. No movement inside. No license plate on the front. Just that idle hum, the faint distortion of heat rising from the hood and her own reflection staring back in the dark glass. She stepped away from the window. Did she call Mark? Wake him up and say what, exactly? That someone was watching their house? That a car she didn't recognize had shown up the same week their daughter predicted a disaster? It sounded insane. It felt insane. But when she peeked back out a minute later, the car was gone. Just gone. Not driving away, not pulling around the corner. It was there and then it wasn't. That night, she barely slept. The next morning, Emma was her usual self again, a chatty, curious, tugging at her lunchbox zipper with both hands while asking if worms could get carsick. Samantha watched her from the kitchen, a smile playing on her lips, but her hands were shaking as she packed carrot sticks. It didn't make sense. None of it did. Emma had no history of hallucinations, no imaginary friends, no exposure to creepy content or weird stories. But somehow she'd known. Samantha tried to shake it, but the feeling stayed. It followed her to the grocery store where the air felt too cold in the dairy aisle. It sat with her in the parking lot while she stared at her steering wheel too long before starting the car. It pulsed in the back of her mind as she picked up the dry cleaning and listened to static pop softly through the car radio like someone whispering behind a wall. By Saturday, it had become a routine. Check the driveway twice before opening the garage. Glance in every rearview mirror longer than necessary. Avoid the TV. Avoid news updates. But that morning something changed. It was a voicemail. A blocked number. 27 seconds of near silence. But halfway through, a sound like someone breathing, slow and wet. And under that, faintly, almost too faint to catch unless you were really listening, a child's voice. Not Emma's. But close enough. She played it again. Then again. The voice said one word. Barely audible. Faint and broken. Don't. Her stomach turned. Samantha didn't tell Mark. He'd laugh it off, or worse, get angry. He was already frustrated with how quiet she'd been. We dodged a bullet, he'd said. We should be celebrating, not spiraling. But this didn't feel like dodging a bullet. It felt like stepping onto a different track, and now something was following behind, silent, matching every step. That night, while the rest of the house slept, she sat at her laptop and opened a private browser. Searched everything she could think of. Plain psychic predictions. Kids who sense danger. Jet warning child story reel. Flight 237 anomaly. Most of it was garbage, forums full of trolls, conspiracy nonsense, clickbait articles with all-caps titles and flashing ads. But one post buried on a private subreddit with 5 upvotes caught her eye. Posted 6 days ago. Just after the Flight 237 incident. My niece said something strange before we boarded Flight 237. That plane hums wrong. She refused to get on. My sister yelled at her until she cried. We boarded anyway. Mid-flight everything went black. I thought we were done. Something was in the air with us. Something wrong. We all felt it. She was right. Attached was a photo of a drawing done in crayon. A plane, crooked in the sky, a dark shape wrapped around its tail. Not detailed. Just an outline. A blur. But it looked familiar. It looked like what Emma had drawn earlier that week, something Samantha had almost forgotten. A scribbled page she'd found on Emma's nightstand. A plane surrounded by black lines that almost looked like long arms. She'd thought it was just messy art. Thrown it away. Now she felt sick. She messaged the user. No reply. She stayed up all night clicking deeper into links she didn't want to understand. And somewhere between the pages and pop-ups, the message kept repeating. Some people sense it before it happens. Some children see things they're not supposed to. The closer you get to it, the harder it is to ignore. At 4:14 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. You should stop digging. That was it. She dropped the phone on the bed and stood up, heart hammering like a bird inside her ribs. She walked down the hallway to Emma's room, pushed the door open quietly. The girl was sitting up. Awake. Eyes already open. I heard it again, Emma said. Samantha stepped closer, swallowed hard. Heard what? The hum. It's getting louder. Then Emma looked up at her and her voice came out smaller, like it was afraid to fill the room. They're looking for who didn't get on. Samantha felt the world narrow to a single, tight breath. Her knees almost gave out. What do you mean, sweetheart? She whispered, crouching beside Emma's bed. They didn't want everyone, Emma said, her voice flat and far away like she was just repeating something she'd heard in a dream. Just enough. Just the ones who couldn't hear it. So no one would ask why. Samantha couldn't speak. Her mouth opened but no sound came. She just pulled Emma into her arms, held her so tightly the child squirmed. She didn't let go. That morning, Samantha told Mark everything. The voicemail. The car. The drawing. The subreddit. All of it. He stared at her like she was unraveling right in front of him. So now you think, what? That some kind of thing is out there, hunting people on planes, he said, eyebrows raised, mouth twisted somewhere between disbelief and frustration. Sam. Baby. We got lucky. Let's just be grateful. It's not luck when your kid warns you, she snapped, louder than she meant to. She knew. And now she hears it again. It's not done. Mark ran his hands through his hair, exhaled, paced the kitchen floor. He looked tired, older. But behind that exhaustion was fear, the kind men don't say out loud. Later that day, another envelope arrived. This time, it was taped to their front door. No postage. No return address. Inside was a photograph. A wide shot of an airport runway. A plane in the distance. A timestamp from 6 days ago, an hour before Flight 237 was supposed to take off. In the foreground, their family. Clear as day. All four of them. Walking away from the gate. And scribbled in pen across the bottom. Still watching. Don't run. Samantha's hands shook. Mark said nothing. He just took the photo, stared at it, and sat down like his legs had gone soft. That night, Emma had another episode. She woke up screaming, not words, just raw sound. Her body curled, fists tight, like she was fighting something only she could see. Samantha and Mark rushed in, but she wouldn't wake, not really. Her eyes were open, but glassy. And she kept whispering. It's not on the planes anymore. After that, Samantha stopped sleeping. She stayed awake in the hallway with a baseball bat, listening for the hum Emma described. She never heard it, not with her ears. But sometimes, in the stillest part of the night, she felt it. A low pressure in her bones. A wrongness in the air, like standing too close to an electric fence humming just beneath the skin of the world. Then the disappearances started. 3 names. 3 families who were also booked for Flight 237 but missed it, rescheduled, or canceled at the last minute. 2 couldn't be reached. 1 was found dead in their home, natural causes, said the report. But no further explanation. Mark told her to stop looking it up. He begged her to stop searching forums. He was slipping, his eyes sunken, his movements slower, like the dread had sunk into his muscles. But Samantha couldn't stop. She had to know what it was. Why it picked certain people. Why Emma could feel it before it arrived. And then on the 13th night, it came. Not a dream. Not a warning. A sound. Low. Vibrating. Alive. It rolled through the walls, through the floorboards, through her teeth. The house felt like it was breathing, pulsing. The windows warped like heat waves danced just outside. Lights flickered. Not on, not off, just uncertain. Emma was already awake, sitting in the hallway. They're here, she said, voice calm. I told you. Samantha opened her mouth, but before she could speak, every screen in the house turned on at once. The TV. The phones. The laptop in the study. All showing the same thing. The tarmac. Flight 237. Frozen in that moment before the engine caught fire. But this time, in the background, something moved. A ripple. A blur. Like a figure, tall and too thin, walking between frames. No eyes. No face. Just motion. Wrong motion. Mark tried to turn it off. Unplug everything. Nothing worked. Then Emma stood, walked toward the screen, and said in the smallest voice, "You're not taking us." And everything stopped. Silence slammed the house like a lid dropping shut. The hum disappeared. The screens went black. The air cleared. Just like that. The next day, Emma didn't remember anything. She asked for waffles. Mark tried to pretend it had all been a breakdown, a shared delusion. Stress, he told himself. Trauma. And maybe it was. Maybe the mind folds reality to survive. But Samantha knew better. She didn't delete the voicemails. She didn't throw away the letter. She didn't stop locking every door twice, checking every mirror for too long. And she never flew again. Years passed. They moved to a quieter place, far from flight paths. Emma grew up. Healthy. Kind. Sharp-eyed, but quieter than most girls her age. Sometimes she'd still pause in public places, malls, parks, hospitals, and tilt her head like she was listening for something far away. Then she'd shake her head and move on. People called them lucky, called Emma a miracle. But Samantha didn't feel lucky. She felt watched. And every now and then when she lay in bed, eyes on the ceiling, she'd hear it, not a sound exactly, but the absence of one. Like a breath being held. Waiting. Because deep down she knew. Whatever they escaped on that runway, it never stopped looking.